Reverend, how you doing, sir?
Good evening. Doing well.
I don't know whether I should be angry with you or not, sir.
Why is that?
The problem with that is, part of me going along with this was that we were getting someone in down there.
I tell you what.
Another one that, I mean, why don't we just go through it if that sounds good?
I tell you, I tell you what to do. Let's take the education and the homeless off,
Off.
and then take it off. Take it off for right now, and then come back and let them fill out the application. We can vote on that
No.
at another time. Hey.
Yes, sir.
What a day. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
And,
You want me to put a mask on?
no, no, sir.
one second. Welcome to our county council meetings. Our first committee meeting will start off with the strategic planning overview. Reverend Milton is the chair of that committee. All members serve, so I'm gonna turn this over to Reverend Middleton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good evening to all of you, members of council, and to those of you who are here tonight. I am so excited to present this new committee or subcommittee, standing special committee of County Council, the Strategic Planning Committee, to help us at least harness all of our priorities as a council that we might be able to better direct staff moving forward. And to help in that process, we brought with us once again the incomparable Dr. Kendra Stewart from the College of Charleston's Riley Center. We know her well. She shepherded us through the ARPA process, and she's here tonight to give us a strategic planning overview. Kendra Stewart.
Good evening. Thank you. I appreciate you having me here this evening and allowing me a few moments to talk about the proposed process and to answer any questions you all may have over this. In general, when we work with communities on strategic planning, we look for the council to set the direction, to identify priorities, and tell us what their vision is. And we work then with the staff to identify the best ways with the resources that you have that these issues and priorities can be addressed and how they will be measured. And so briefly, our process will be somewhat like the process we went through before with you all regarding identifying ARPA priorities. And the great news is some of the work has already been done since we've gone through somewhat of a process of discussing some of the issues. But this, of course, will build on that process. And so we'll begin with an environmental scan of interviewing or speaking with each council member to hear their perspective and looking at all of the past engagement that's happened with members of your community over the last 2 years. And through that research, the Riley Center will identify some trends that we've seen through this research. And then we will work with Mr. Tootin and his leadership team to identify what they see as some of the top priorities. We'll get with council and work with all of you as a group to get feedback on those priorities that have been identified or suggested. And then from there, we will work on developing a vision and a mission for Charleston County with both, again, the staff and then the feedback and adoption with the council. And then with that, we will take that to the staff who will then identify or help identify goals and objectives as to how those priorities could be be addressed best and with the resources. And then the measures that could be used to determine the success of how the county's doing. And then bringing all of that back to council for approval and input. So in some, that this is generally a 6 to 12 month process, depending on how long it takes to get folks together and to feel like we've done a deep dive with the resources the staff has and clearly identifying goals and priorities and measures that everybody's comfortable with. And so with that, I'll see if you all have any questions or comments or feedback for me.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Stewart? All right, so council members, we've received the official proposal from Dr. Stewart and her colleagues. Is there any consideration, Mr. Chair?
I make a motion to move forward to enter into a agreement with the doctor in the College of Charleston.
Probably
Work
moved,
with our staff to move forward.
moved by our chair. Is there a second? Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you
Stewart.
so
We look forward
much.
to working with you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's the end of our strategic
You're
planning.
welcome, sir. Now we move into our Planning and Public Works Committee. Mr. Darby, we have 2 items.
Thank you, sir. I would put Mr. Worm on the spot, but I wouldn't treat the young man like that again, sir. So I'll handle it. I've got it. Thank you, Mr. Worm, I knew you would have accepted, sir.
Of course.
Okay, Ms. Salisbury?
Yes, sir. We have before you the minutes
Move for
of
approval.
February.
Second.
Properly moving second. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Stands approved. Ms. Salisbury?
Yes, sir. The next item is a overview about the Rational Roads Alternative 6. Okay. Back from staff.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm a little different than Mr. Pryor, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hey, Kristen, how does it, can you read? Good evening. I'm Deborah Otomo of Charleston County Public Works. I have here with me Chris Gossett, who is our design consultant, ICE, and he's going to be doing this presentation along with me. We're here to follow up to the Rational Roads presentation that y'all heard 2 weeks ago. And before we start talking about what we have talked with Rational Roads, their concept, they're calling it alternative sits. We have engineered their concept to come up with something that we can move forward in the public process. However, we first wanted to talk about the purpose and need because we heard a lot of concerns that they had with our purpose and need. So I kind of wanted to brief council on that first. So back in 2016, council asked staff to go out for public comment on all the projects listed on what we call the potential funding scenario list. And one of those projects listed was the US 17 at Main Road intersection and Main Road widening from Bees Ferry to Betsy Carricen, and that's how it was presented to the voters. So we collected comments during that time period, and what we found was that 75% had little to no objection to any of the projects listed on that board. But 17 and Main, in fact, generated the most comments, and it also received the highest percentage of support. To further go into the comments that we received before this was voted on, we saw a lot of no objection, we saw total support, but however, when we looked at the total support, we did see that there was about 8% that did have concerns with the project limits. So you can see a quote right there at the bottom that kind of shows there is some contingency with the project limits. So that was roughly about 8% that supported the project. So to hold true with what we presented to the voters, which was widen Main Road, we developed our purpose. And for segment C, that purpose is obviously to widen a road. The purpose is to reduce congestion and to increase capacity. That is the only reason you would widen a road. There was no concerns brought up during the referendum about safety. It was strictly widen Main Road. But again, with the environmental process, we have to develop a purpose, and we have to show that there is indeed a need. So when we started to look at the need, we did a preliminary traffic analysis. And what we found was that there is actually no need to widen segment B. There was no need, so why spend the taxpayer money? So we went to the Army Corps of Engineers, who is the environmental permitting agency, and we talked about this with them, and we said, hey, we really don't see where B is needed. So would you be okay if we pursued segment A and we pursued segment C, which you can see here on the map, and treat those as two separate projects? And they said, yes, those are obviously two separate projects with two independent utilities, so you can move forward and segment those projects. We did leave segment B on the board just in case we ever wanted to revisit it later down the road, but our intention was to move forward with segment A and segment C. So what that does is that allows us to expedite what we know is fully supported segment A while we work out everything on segment C. It also puts us in what we call an environmental assessment instead of a EIS, which is a 7-year permitting process. So it really allowed us to move forward with segment A quickly, and we got council approval to do so. So one of the main projects we heard Mr. Zogar talk about and why he wanted segment B included was the Mary Ann Point along Main Road intersection improvements and how dangerous it is. Well, just last July, we asked County Council to approve safety improvements at that project. So that project is already underway, and we're actually doing a road safety audit right now where we're identifying short-term and long-term improvements. And we should have the results of that at the beginning of this summer. So that is a project in the works, is already happening. So again, this was a slide that they presented last week, of course, without the X's and checks. Their purpose and need was to widen Main Road and include segments B and C. Again, we showed there was no need for B. The main project that they had focus on was the Mary Ann Point, which is already a project. And if we include B back in there, we have one continuous project, segment A, B, and C. So everything we've done for segment A will have to come to a halt. We'll have to submit one environmental document. And then we have $46 million in SID money on, that we have to have this project under construction by 2025. So all that is at risk if we put segment B back in there. They also expressed a lot of concerns about improving safety. All our projects are going to take safety into account. It's simply not a purpose because, again, what we pitched to the public was widen Main Road and really had said nothing about safety. They had some great ideas about safety, and we'll show you those, and we have implemented those in all the alternatives. So anywhere we are coming up to an intersection that's dangerous, we're going to improve safety at that intersection. That's a given. They also talked a lot about the context-based design and the need for that. That is important. We have learned that on all our projects. That's a very subjective way of, one person could think something is context-based, why the other could not. A perfect example is Johnny Dodds Boulevard. I feel like that's context-based, and that's a widening project. It does include trees, it includes lighting, it includes bike and ped facilities, and all of our project alternatives can include all these context-based designs as well. So we can apply Chapter 2 to any alternative we move forward with and have the community have the input into that. Another thing they mentioned was to minimizing the community and environmental impacts. That is the whole reason the NEPA process is in place. It quantifies the environmental impacts, and you can compare each one and each alternative, which is the reason we have to go through the NEPA process. So that is happening. We were kind of confused on their improving community connections, so I really didn't put a check or X there, what they meant by that. But again, there's an X by fund the entire effort because we do not want to include segment B unless we want to stop segment A. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris Gossett, who will go over their alternatives and what we have engineered in depth.
All right, thank you, Devery. Again, I'm Chris Gossett with ICE. We're the design consultant that was chosen by Charleston County to develop the Main Road corridor. My piece is the segment C, which Devery has shown. What this is the study area that we initially looked at. We initially took 5 alternatives out to public involvement over a year ago. Got 850 something comments on those. And there was a significant concern about doing a fully virtual public meeting at that time. We were in the middle of COVID restrictions. A lot of the comments that we got were requesting an in-person meeting. So the county agreed to do that, and we're working towards that now. Through that process, the Rational Road Group kind of formed sometime during that, and we started talking with them. They presented their proposal to us. We've talked with them about it several times, and we'll go through what I'm going to do the next few slides is just take theirs, what they gave us, piece by piece, what they gave us, what we ended up engineering and coming up with that we will take out to the public at the next public involvement meeting. So in their proposal, and again, they talked a lot about segment B. I'm not going to focus on segment B because what this project is segment C, and that's what we're going to focus on. So at the beginning, we'll start at the Main and Maybank intersection. They looked at it, proposed a roundabout, which on the left-hand side here, you can see they show a roundabout there. They had a traffic engineer that took a look at this and developed the concepts that you see on the right. What the right is AM and PM peak hours and some laneage that they think will handle the traffic at this roundabout. And all of these are projected out to 2045 year design volumes. So we took that and developed this roundabout. You can see, and I left the picture here where they had dual lanes. So essentially the heavy movement is along Main and through onto Bohicket. So through the roundabout, we have dual lanes in these two quadrants. But what we found was just having those two lanes there with our projected traffic volumes wasn't quite enough capacity to handle. And in 2045, this intersection started bogging down and didn't handle the traffic. So what we did is we took in all the quadrants and put some bypass lanes in here to handle the heavy movements in those quadrants. I'll point out in here what you see, the blocks with the hatching on it. Those are what we think will be relocations, commercial type relocations with this alternative. Now I will say this is not unique for this alternative. There are a couple other alternatives that we improved this intersection that have similar impacts. So these impacts are not unique just to this proposal. So the next section that they looked at was in the same general area they proposed a couple of connections from Bohicket to Maybank, which shown as A and B in their proposal. And they also show a connection from Maybank up and around to Brownswood. We'll talk about each one of those. So for A, so we'll focus on A, which is this connection. Based on what they gave us, they had this alignment, and this is probably a little confusing, but our layout was kind of upside down from theirs. But so this is Bohicket, Maybank. If you're familiar with the area, this is the library, this is the Bilo on the corner, and Hot Gap Middle School. The alignment that was originally given to us appeared to be on top of the roadway in the Hot Gap Middle School, which is their internal circulation. And they also had a connection to Bohicket in this area. We looked at that, and it did not have the required spacing from the entrance into the middle school. So we slid that south and to give us enough spacing that meets the DOT Arms Manual access requirements. And then kind of followed what they had shown around behind the middle school with a connection to Maybank here. The other connection that they showed in their C from Maybank up to Brownswood, we'll talk about that in just a second, but we lined it up so it would be an intersection so you wouldn't have offset intersections there. So we tried to line it up to make it function as good as we could. The other option that they showed as B, they listed as a service road behind KJ's Market in Bilo, which is the commercial access point behind the Bilo there. We did not show that. We chose to eliminate that because I'm dealing with another project right now. Actually had a conversation about it on my way here, that we had a very similar situation where we closed a driveway. We took no property from, this one was a Food Lion, but we took no property from them, just closed a driveway, and right now we're looking at a little over a $2 million right-of-way impact just for closing a driveway. So we chose not to show that here. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we just didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. So, so the next one we'll talk about is their connection C from Maybank over to Brownswood. If you see the alignment that they have here, it kind of goes through a parcel and then through a neighborhood and connects to Brownswood. Again, this is a little backwards. I'll talk about this piece here in just a second. I know it looks a little strange, but there's a reason for that. So this is the parcel that the original alignment had it. There's an existing road through here that goes to the back of these properties, and they had a connection coming through this neighborhood here to Brownswood. Again, this location at Brownswood, we didn't think would meet the access requirements for DOT because of access spacing. It's just entirely too close. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't function. DOT wouldn't let you do it. So we looked at some other alternatives, some different locations to make the connection to Brownswood. Here across from Island Estates, again, trying to line up and make an intersection that works, tying into an existing stub out for this neighborhood, and made the alignment through here. Now, the reason that this section looks a little different is this property currently has an approved site plan, and it's being cleared now. And we got a hold of the site development plan for that, and this internal road is what the developer is proposing for that now. Roughly, we didn't get the design files for that, but we laid something in there that was very close to what they had. So we tied in with what the developer was going to be there. Since it's being cleared now, the assumption was that it would be there before this project came along, and we would just tie into what was there. So, all right, the next section that we'll talk about in their proposal, I think they call it Section 5. Maybank is up here. The middle school is here. Angel Oak Drive comes out here and down to Plow Ground. What they proposed was some turn lanes at all of these intersections and a relocation of Berry Hill to align with Edding. Again, making a 90-degree intersection there, which we agree with. So what we came up with when we started looking at this, we put all these turn lanes in here, and again, we showed the relocation of Berry Hill to line up with Edding, which we agree we think that's a good idea. Turn lanes at Winsboro. And then we started looking at the location here. This Angel Oak Drive comes in to Bohicket at it's not a good intersection. So we started looking at that, and we turned it to line up with Kano. And again, each one of these intersections, we did include the turn lanes that the Rational Roads Group proposed. So we agree with that, and we'll go forward with those. All right, the next section was a connection from existing Cane Slash to either Bohicket or Plow Ground. Again, they showed 3 potential alternatives. We looked at those. A couple of them we didn't think would work to convey the traffic that we think would be here. So we took a little bit different approach, although it's very similar to one that they proposed. So this is an existing cane slash, and we extended that road out to a new intersection at plow ground and did some improvements along plow ground with turn lanes to make that intersection work as well and to handle the traffic that we project would be on that road. All right, the next one I want to talk about is on the left here. They show, this is North Edenvale coming into Bohicket, Edenvale and Bohicket, North Edenvale and Bohicket. If you're familiar with this location, I believe that's a real estate office or some building that's very close to the roadway on Bohicket. It's got some ballards up around the building. The building's actually been hit a few times from vehicular traffic. So they initially showed a roundabout here, and because of the geometry, we did have to move it just a little bit, and we came up, so instead of the roundabout being here, we slid it south a little bit to get a better entrance geometry coming into that roundabout, but we did show a roundabout, and we kept what they had shown in their proposal with the multi-use path in all directions around that area. The next area, this is the intersection of Bohicket River and Betsy Carricen. Again, they showed a roundabout here. We took that and developed a roundabout, and again, because of the traffic, we showed some bypass lanes in all four quadrants to be able to carry that traffic that we projected. And this one, we probably will have to do a little bit more work too. After meeting with county staff, one of the issues that came up was if there's a big event, PGA or whatever, at Kiowa, we think we probably have some problems here. So we'll take a look at that again. All right, the next section in their presentation to this committee a couple weeks ago, they talked about the lower portion of Bohicket based on our traffic analysis. Does not show that it needs capacity improvement in 2045. It functions, although the traffic continues to grow and grow out here, but our traffic projections don't show that this area needs capacity improvements. So before we got this proposal, based on the information and the feedback that we got from the previous public information meeting, we were already developing another alternative to eliminate this section from one of the other alternatives, and we will move that alternative forward to the next public meeting as well. And then again, wanted to touch on, Devery touched on the content-based design. And Mr. Zoglar did talk about Chapter 2 of the roadway design manual, and I believe he pointed out that this is about an 800-page document, and he talked about Chapter 2. We feel like, based on what we have done to this point, the alternatives that we developed, we are incorporating content-based design into this, and it's one of the reasons that the alternatives that we moved forward previously that improve Bohicket, there are certain sections of Bohicket that we used a divided highway instead of a 5-lane section. The reason we did that is we knew that this section of Bohicket was going to be controversial. The trees are of utmost importance to the folks that live in Johns Island and in Charleston County as a whole. We knew that. That's why we developed the alternatives the way that we did. And we also have incorporated multi-use paths throughout the corridor on every alternative that we presented. And I would caution taking bits and pieces out of an 800-page document and one chapter when this is the guidance, the design guidance from DOT for DOT roads. There's other chapters that you have to look at. You have to look at it as a whole and cherry picking it is pretty dangerous when you try to do that. So, well, the last thing we wanted to show was based on what we have done with Alternative 6, the design. We ran it back through the same exact criteria and measured it for impacts as we did all of the other alternatives. That's one of the things that we have to do to meet NEPA and the permitting requirements. We can't have one that we measure differently than all of the others. So based on that, the way we calculated impacts for all the other ones, we calculated impacts for this alternative. And right now, based on all the other alternatives, this one is not the lowest, but it is lower than most. Now, keep in mind, these designs at this stage are very conceptual. They are very conservative designs, and all of these numbers for all of the alternatives are very conservative numbers. If this alternative moves forward as the preferred alternative, we will refine this and we will get these alternatives down to the bare minimum that we have to give Charleston County a project that can be built and that meets the purpose and need of the project.
Ladies and gents, are there any questions for the presenters?
Mr.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chair, so how much communication, I know Rational Roads group presented to us, and then now you're presenting to us based on kind of rebutting, but how much interaction, collaboration have you all had with them, you know, through this process and then since?
We've met with them 7 times. Either they've met with county staff, members of council, and we have been involved in some of those, not all of those. We've had conversations with them, but we've met with them quite a bit working through this.
Also, Mr. Darby, so when we received their alternative 6, and certainly there were good things that you did see in that particular design, and you've integrated some of those things. Was there more that you potentially could have had conversations around some of the improvement designs that they had suggested that also could have overlaid into what you were came up with to make it a better option?
Well, again, this is very early in the project development. We will continue to have public input on all of the alternatives. Based on what they gave us and conversations that we had with them, I think where we are now is kind of where we would be even if we continued to have conversations with them. Now, this is, again, very early in the project development process. This will go back out to the public, for the entire public to comment on. And then we'll see what kind of feedback we get and go from there.
All right, I'll have future questions
Thank you.
as we go through the process.
Mr. Spears?
So have y'all accepted that alternative 6 is an alternative, or are we still looking at 5 alternatives?
No, sir. We think this one meets the purpose and need, and we intend to move it forward to the next public involvement meeting.
Okay. There does appear to be, it appears that your group has accepted that there is a lot of common ground, a lot of common interest in tweaking alternative 6 and even tweaking alternatives 1 through 5 to better accommodate the things that alternative 6 does, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and there is some common ground there, which is wonderful. But since they presented their alternative 6 to us, have y'all had dialogue with them since that time?
No, sir.
I mean, okay, so I'm sure that what you have shown us tonight is creating a lot of ideas and a lot of thought with them. So I do think it's critical that there be an open line of communication between y'all. I was very encouraged when I saw alternative 6 because a traditional, let's just jam this thing through, I thought I can never vote for that. This is John's Island, this I'm not going to vote just let's take the bulldozers and let's just make a huge corridor. So I was very encouraged when I saw Alternative 6. It's not like they're just a community group. They're not a bunch of neighbors that do various professions, and none of them are transportation engineers. I mean, they have employed professionals, and I'm sure you know that. You probably know who they have employed. I do. I just would love to see more dialogue. I hope there's a solution here that I can support. And I will admit, I haven't drilled down on staffs and you as the consultant for Charleston County. I haven't drilled down into exactly what the 5 alternatives are. I'm waiting on a little more refinement before I dig in that deep. I'm getting close though, but I think it's about that time now. But I do think, based on their level of detail, they obviously have done a great deal of work. Their professionals have done a great deal of work. And I would love to see us develop or maintain at least the dialogue that we've had and maybe increase that. And let's find something that works. Let's find something that Dickie Swears can vote for. I would love that. So that's all I ask.
Ditto.
It's a big ask.
Ditto. I'm on the same page with you. I think we need to have some additional dialogue with that group.
Any other? Ms. Johnson and then
Yes.
Mr. Moody.
I wanted to find out, in reference to the roundabouts that was presented by the Rational Roads. You mentioned that you were incorporating some of those roundabouts in your plans, other plans. So I'm not sure if those roundabouts that look like something that we can use, did you put them all in one plan, or you were spreading those ideas out throughout the 5 plans?
No, we have some of the other alternatives could include these roundabouts, but as of right now, these roundabouts are in alternate 6.
But I thought you said that, let's see, I think there were about 5 different places where you mentioned that there were roundabouts near the Piggly Wiggly or the high school, Hot Gap Middle School,
Yes, ma'am.
et cetera. So you were refining some of those that were recommended so it could be aligned in with certain roads and be able to work the roundabouts. So what I want to know is, those places that you saw where the roundabout looked good, did you try to incorporate that in any one plan other than 6? No, you didn't?
We have not yet, no.
Okay, you just made a recommendation back to the group.
So everything that we looked at tonight was just alternate 6.
Okay.
Based on what the Rational Roads group had given us and the refinement that we did with that.
At some point, you did mention that the one at Marianne Point Road, that roundabout there, you were looking, I think Debbie said that, looking at incorporating that into another safety project. So that is one that you were going to be using.
I don't know if that's a roundabout.
Yeah.
We don't even know if a roundabout works there. We're looking
Oh,
at that right now.
you're just
We're
looking
doing
at it.
intersection improvements to improve the safety there is what is a council approved project we're working on.
Well, I was on to the, I think at least 2, the sessions where the Rational Roads presented their project and was asking our staff to help with that, and you were on probably 1. So I do thank you for looking at that. I don't know if we are where we need to be right now, but I am concerned that we are trying to get to a point where we can start working on more of the conceptions that you have, where you can bring the whole thing back to us, to county council, so we can make some kind of decision. So you have any idea when we might even see all of these plans?
That is in the works now, and I would rely on county staff to do that, but we are planning on a meeting with council to show them everything that's going to show you all everything that's going to be taken to the public at the next public meeting. Which will show you, it'll actually be six alternatives, this being one of those.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moody?
Mr. Toma? Yes, sir. Can you repeat, at the beginning, you talked about the scope and need and changing of the scope and need and what the consequences would be of that. Can you tell me those again? I missed
So
some of
sure. So segment B is basically from River Chisholm to Main and Maybank. And we found, with our traffic analysis that there was really no need. There's no 2040, there's really no need to widen that piece. So we had to go to the core and say, hey, we know segment A is really supported. Segment C, we know it's contentious. Since there's such a large gap, can we approach these as two separate projects? And they said, yes, you can. So we brought that forth to council to segment the project. We got $46 million from the SIB, and it says that segment A has to be under construction before January 1st, 2025, and that it has to be constructed before 2028. So if we throw segment B back in the midst, we have one environmental permit,
Everything's
and
thrown
there's
out.
no way we can meet those deadlines.
That's huge. Thank you, sir.
Believe it or not, segment A, I don't think is controversial.
At all.
Yeah,
Very well
and
supported.
And it's moving forward, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Segment C, I always knew would be the biggest challenge.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I didn't think segment B would be all that challenging, but y'all are saying it is not only not all that challenging, but not even needed.
Correct.
Which is a wonderful thing.
Right.
But you do acknowledge that there are some safety improvements that can be done in that segment. So, but those can be done independent really of this project, although they do directly tie independent of this project. In other words,
Absolutely.
we're not going to do full-scale segment B, but we are going to make the necessary safety improvements there.
Absolutely. In fact, if the purpose wasn't, to improve capacity, then you could make it improve all the intersections along Bohicket. That would not be a continuous project. So you could absolutely make those individual projects. Now, the DOT has asked us to look at funding Berry Hill and Bohicket for years with allocation funds. As you know, we only fund $2 million in intersections, so it's never made the cut, but it is a great project. And they've, have that in theirs, and we also have it in some of our other alternatives. It does need intersection improvements. So depending which alternative we move forward with, we'll take advantage of when we see those intersections that need to be addressed.
And segment C includes the entire intersection of Maybank, what would be Maybank, Main, and Bohicket.
Yeah, it
I know it's
actually,
3 roads, but it's really 2 roads.
correct, and it actually goes to Brownswood, so we can encompass all of the Maybank Main intersection as well and clear that whole
Right,
traffic
I've
out.
had folks argue that Highway 41 shouldn't include improvements on Highway 17, but we all know you can't do one without the other. So even though it's Highway 41 improvements, technically, we still have to make improvements on 17. Same thing would apply here.
Correct.
It's not like you're gonna go halfway into that intersection and say, oh no, you can't cross that intersection. So it does include the entire intersection.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other? Yes, sir.
Darby, Mr. Verona, I had a question on the proposed changes on adding connector roads. And that was, I'm not sure if there's a slide, what sheet that is, but it's Stanley Drive south to Maybank, enhancing service roads between KJ's Market.
This one.
Yes, ma'am, that one.
Okay, you're gonna talk about this one.
I had a question on that. And so that would be adding these connector roads, and one of them looks like, kind of like a big snake. It goes back and does a funny kind of squiggle there, kind of along the back of it. Looks like a whole bunch of different people's properties.
Yes, sir.
And then just below that, it says install wide multi-use paths separated by the road from the road by planting strips, and on both sides of Bohicket Road through Johns Island City Park that connects Magwood Brownswood and Maybank into Angel Oak Park. So would those would be like wide multi-use paths on both sides of all those roads?
Yes, sir. Every alternative that we're moving forward, a commitment has been made to have a multi-use path. Right now, I think we're doing 12-foot paths, 10 or 12-foot wide multi-use paths throughout the entire corridor. If we do any of these connection roads, we would plan to show those as well.
Because that'll mean you'll have to take a lot more property from people.
Absolutely.
And I guess, and I remember we had some pretty serious conversations about how wide the multi-use paths were on James Island, along,
Riverland,
I'm not-
Riverland and Central.
Into that next.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of concerned about that, because, I mean, I'm talking about on Maybank Highway, on the road, I'm, not Maybank Highway, on James Island, across the creek, when we started at the creek, and goes by Dills Bluff Road. I can't remember the name of that road right now for some reason, but,
Is it Harborview?
Harborview.
Okay.
Harborview, yeah, we had some serious conversations about those, so, I'm curious to see where we go with all that. Thank you very much.
Also, Mr. Chair, I see that you extended segment C to Brownswood. Why could it not also be extended to Mary Ann Point?
I'm sorry?
Segment,
What extended, that was part of segment C always.
right. But I'm saying that since that is also in the thought process of the design, why could Mary Ann Point also not be?
The traffic needs didn't show it needed to be extended that far. So again, it was all based on the purpose to improve traffic congestion. And it wasn't an issue all the way to Marianne Point. It was actually only to Brownswood.
Yeah.
Any other concerns, discussion, questions? Thank you very much. Thank you. You are quite exemplary in your deportment. Thank you so very much. And we'll go to number 2, Ms. Salisbury.
Yes, sir, we have a presentation regarding Riverland and Central Park Road from Mr. Toma.
Okay, so council has requested an update for Riverland and Central Park. Again, last summer, council did change the purpose of the project to improve safety at the intersection of Riverland Drive and Central Park for all modes while minimizing impacts to adjacent property and grand trees. So now this project is a 3,500-foot shared use path, which goes all the way to Woodland Shores to the Senior Center. We also have a project underway where we're doing sidewalks along Woodland Shores, a wider sidewalk along Maybank, also sidewalks along Camp Road, and we're filling in all the gaps along Folly Road. So this connects over 5 miles of bike ped facilities. So our initial project, was basically focused on this area, so we do have to do a lot more survey. Y'all also asked us to include intersection improvements, include a 50-foot right turn lane with a flashing light so that pedestrians can safely cross, so we are looking into that. I'll tell you, it took about 3 months to negotiate the scope and fee after we did the speed study. We talked the consultant down about 8%. We had sent out survey letters to not only the residents, but also to the property owners, and survey is going to begin next week. And we will be working on the preliminary plans throughout the summer, and we see that the right-of-way acquisition, utility coordination, and the permitting, we're estimating that's going to take roughly 16 months. So you would see this project under construction or go to bid out in the end of 2023. Any questions?
Questions, concerns?
What?
If not,
Yeah, Mr. Darby,
yes, sir?
why so long? I mean, we've been working on this thing for at least 2
So,
or 3 years.
so I believe it was either June or July, y'all gave us a directive and y'all asked for a speed study to be performed as part of that, and to come back to y'all and report the results of that. So the DOT did a speed study, and it took them until August, September to get those results. We came back, presented that to council, and once we presented that, we moved forward with negotiating the scope and fee. And we went back and forth about 2 or 3 times. That finally got approved in December. And survey, it's hard to get surveyors out there right now. It's running about 2 to 3 months. They're just hard to find. So they are starting survey next week.
Okay, so what are we going to have to acquire any property? I thought we weren't.
We're trying our hardest
Acquiring
not to. If we do, we'll come back to you and inform you. But again, the goal was to minimize property impacts.
Right.
So we're gonna do our best to do that. And if we gotta shrink the path down to 8 foot in some areas, we'll do it.
So it's gonna take 15 months to get this project back before council to go out for bid.
Yeah, we believe there are some permitting issues, yes, sir, and the permitting and the utility coordination with all the utilities out there, that is about 15 to 16 months of all of this, yes, sir.
Wow, that's.
All right, any other questions or concerns? If not, thus ends the Planning and Public Works Commission session. Mr. Pryor?
Thank you, Mr. Darby. We'll now move into our Finance Committee. All members of council participates. Item number 1 is approval of minutes of February 24, 2022. What is the pleasure?
Approve.
Moved and seconded. Any deletions or additions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item number 2, Mr. Williams' presentation of the social service campus construction update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Members of council, I just want to give you a brief update on the social services campus. The project, overall, the schedule of the campus is moving forward. You can see the social services building at the top in blue. We're still under construction. The Keystone Library is under construction, and then the Carta Hub is on a temporary hold while they work through some of their grant funding processes, which has to be completed before they go out to bid with their drawings. Diving into the actual social services building itself, construction, design's complete. So for construction, about 80% of the site is done. They're still working on paving and trees and landscaping. The main building itself, the core and shell, is roughly 80% complete. There's still some storefront that has to go in, but that's how they're getting material in and out of the building. And we're really concentrating on the interior upfit. They're working 3rd floor down. 3rd floor right now has some of the finished materials going in, flooring, paint, ceiling grids. 2nd floor is a little bit further behind, and 1st floor is how they're gonna work their way out of the building, so it's the least furthest along. Schedule-wise, they are working continuously to improve their schedule because we had about a 30-day delay on the schedule due to some COVID issues and mainly on supply issues, roofing material being one of the biggest ones that hit us. And so we're still estimating a 3rd quarter completion of this year, more specifically sometime hopefully in the August 15th timeframe. And then we are working with Charleston Center and the other tenants to work on a move-in schedule. And so that's scheduled for a few months after the completion of it. Big news is we're still completely on budget and everything is holding strong from a financial standpoint. Digging a little bit further in to the financials, we've contracted 89% of what you guys gave us as a budget is under contract, and of that, we've spent 64% of that 89%. One of the big things I'm still very proud of is the owner contingency. We have not had to touch that on this project whatsoever. So that, and as at this point, I don't foresee having to need any of that. Looking at the construction of the building itself, we are projecting a mid-August completion. And there you see the activation period going to end of October. That's when we hope to have all agencies in the building and the building completely 100% functional. This is some quick photos looking at the campus. You can see the social services building here in front, and in the background you can see the construction efforts underway for the library project. This is the southeast view of the building, sort of here in the middle. You can see the opening where we're taking materials in. That's the main entrance. This is the river's view of it. 1st floor, the monumental stair going in between the 1st and 2nd floor. The elevators for public elevators go to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors. Construction on the 1st floor, drywall's going in. Still a lot of rough in the metal studs. 2nd floor, a lot of above ceiling work is going in. And 3rd floor, you can start seeing some of the finished materials being installed, being protected. And this is a view of one of the future patient rooms. You can see the large amount of light we provided them. That's one of the big wins from a staff standpoint of what for their patient care. So I know that was fast. I know we've got a big schedule tonight. Any questions about the social services before I pass it off to Carl?
Any questions? Mr. Moody?
The contingency not being touched, that's very impressive. That's construction financing, that's unheard of. So I hope that pulls through. That's amazing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Also, before I pass off, some of the council members have come out for tours. If anybody would love a tour of the building, please let me know. I'm more than happy to give you all individual tours or group tours or however we need to do it. So I'm there for you if you need me.
Thank you, John.
I'm gonna pass it off to Carl.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Just real quick overview of the Keystone Library. I've been up here in January, and then again last month I gave you guys an update, but this is just a recent update. So we're currently at 63% complete. The new revised substantial completion date is 5 September, and that's based upon a requested extension from the contractor for various reasons that I'll go into. This is an older picture. I intentionally used it. It's about 3 weeks old, but it really illustrates the challenges associated with renovating the Cooper River Library. As you can see, the shell there is completely exposed, and what we went into once we got into it is we realized there was an addition that was added into the library that was unknown or unforeseen, that nobody knew about. It wasn't on the existing documents that we had. So there was actually the original library, and then it was added on to at some point that's unknown, and then it was added on again in 1973. At each one of those different iterations, different building materials were used that all varied. And so because of that, it's sort of a Frankenstein of a building. And so getting into it, we realized there was some additional asbestos material that had to be remediated. There were some structural issues that had to be fixed, and then the roof had to be redone as well. All of those added a little bit of time onto the duration. From the inside, you can see some of those challenges, the different roof heights or the different ceiling heights there from the original structure here in the foreground, and the background was the added-on portion that was unknown about. And then you can see some steel columns that had to be added in there in order to reinforce those members. But the good news is that the contractor's done a good job of keeping on schedule. Other than that, even though he was faced with the same supply issues and COVID issues that all construction industry has been facing, they did that by essentially anytime they discovered something new, immediately brought everybody together, the designers, the builder, the owner, and had immediate on-site meetings in order to rectify it and to move forward. The other good news is that we're through the rough patch, we're through demolition and discovering all of those surprises, and now we're just moving forward with building the new stuff. And so from the other side, the new addition portion that's adding on to the Cooper River Library, everything's on schedule, and that kind of demonstrates right there that we are done with the exterior skin. We've got the structure up. We're done with the foundation and the site work. And moving forward, we just have the interior spaces. April and May, we're going to be working on the roof and the parapet for Cooper River Library. And we'll be installing windows into this new section and the mechanical systems. In June and July, access flooring system and the interior gypsum walls. And then in August, September, trim, casework, and furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Finishing up with final inspections in September and occupying and moving in October, which is on schedule and in accordance with when the library will need it and expects it. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Okay, lights, please. We now move to item number 3, which is 2 resolutions, A and B. What is the pleasure? We move for approval. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Dodd. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. Item 4A, B, and C. 4A is FY tax, A tax for the municipalities.
Approval A, B, and C.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Johnson. Mr. Swears.
If I could just get a brief overview of 4A, the A-tax to municipalities. I know COVID threw a big wrench in our A-tax plans, and I know this is me saying this, we shorted the municipalities, and now we're trying to make good on that, I assume, but you give me some reassurance that we're making them more whole than they were.
So we have made the municipalities whole from the fiscal 20 cuts that we made. We did that in fiscal 21. What we're asking for right now is to modify the budgets for distributions to these municipalities for the remainder of the year. The A-tax has come in much higher than we anticipated this year, and we want to make sure that they get the percentage that council has committed to. So that's why we're asking for you to increase the allocations to those municipalities.
Okay, wonderful. And I would like to say, I've always found that budget staff does a wonderful job of when we budget conservatively, especially when the money's going to others, and when you look at like the local option sales tax, for example, they do a wonderful job of making that up in the long run. And, so in some years I have argued with them that we should have given back more. But when I look at the long range, it always works out. And that's due to the diligence of the budget staff. So I totally give them credit on that.
Is anybody else? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. Item 5, FY22 tax mail of Honor Museum. What is the pleasure? Request to consider. So if somebody want to explain to us what this is before we, okay.
So County Council previously approved a contribution to the Medal of Honor Museum of $500,000 a year for 10 years. That contribution is coming out of accommodation tax revenues, and it was contingent on the town of Mount Pleasant and the South Carolina, the state, providing them funding also. So in the budget that the state set for the fiscal year that we're currently in, they appropriated $1 million for the Medal of Honor Museum. So what we're asking is for council to agree to and appropriate $500,000 for the museum for this fiscal year. We will be coming back in next fiscal year and asking for another $500,000. That will match what the state has done, and then we will be monitoring what, if any, further funding comes from the state, and we'll be carrying those in future years.
So what is Mount Pleasant? Do they have to put in any matching? I heard you said Mount Pleasant, the city, the county and the state, so.
Yes, Mount Pleasant has actually provided funding of more than $1 million to the museum. So right now, we're targeting off what the state has done because we can't go above either one of them.
All right, and so they've got all this, I guess, worked out where it was supposed to be here, and then they moved it to Texas somewhere. So now I guess this is something separate than the one they're building in Texas?
Yes, this is different than the one in Texas. They will tell you that they're the National Museum. I'm not quite sure exactly what the difference is. But yes, this is not the one that's in Texas. This will be one that's built out in Mount Pleasant.
Okay. Mr. Swears?
So, Ms. Altenheim, basically, what budget staff is recommending is in keeping with the original motion that passed, which was to allocate our funds only if state and municipal funds are allocated, and what y'all are doing is allocating them proportionally.
Yes, we are allocating it based on, at the time council approved the funding, they said $500,000 per year, but not exceeding what the timing of what the state and the municipality was doing. So in total for the county, we've committed to $5 million. That's
correct.
But all of that is dependent on what happens with Mount Pleasant and the state.
I still think that's a valid strategy, so I do agree with sticking to that.
Motion?
Well, before you go, Mr. Pryor, was there any type of controversy with this museum with the past? And if so, what was it?
Yes, you're talking about what was supposed to be a national, and then the people from the national, I think, pulled out and went to some part of Texas. I can't remember what Texas they went to. And so, Mount Pleasant decided they was gonna go on their own instead of going, I think General Livingston and some more people were involved. But, I think, Corinne, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think they had some disagreements and they took it to Texas.
There were some actually design issues with the town of Mount Pleasant. I don't remember the exact details, but what the group wanted in a design was not going to be what Mount Pleasant allowed, so they decided to pack up and go someplace else. And this is supposed to be the official, coming to Mount Pleasant is supposed to be the official national museum.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. The other one went to Houston, yeah. All right, so let us make a motion and then.
I'll move to approve. I have
Is
some
there a
questions, too.
second? All right, now discuss, now, Mr. Moody.
Chairman, I think, Mr. Swears, you made that motion back then, and I agree with you. It's a wise move. It keeps us in check. But my question, Ms. Altenheim, is I get what they're doing. They want the pro rata share to keep up. But the question I have is what difference does it make if it's in our pocket or their pocket? Are they planning to start spending this money? So, I mean, my concern would be if they've got $1 million from South Carolina, $1 million from us, $1 million from Mount Pleasant, are they going to start spending this money? What if these other sources don't come through and that money is gone?
I hope they're planning on spending this money. I don't believe they've started yet because they're still waiting for the contributions to come in. We had an indication from Mount Pleasant that they're going to appropriate some additional dollars for them in the next budget year. So it's sitting in an account that right now is being managed by Patriots Point for them. So if you're asking were we better off holding on and doing the allocations based on what council said, 500,000 a year, in the sense that we're getting interest on the money? Yeah, we are.
Well, I guess I would disagree only slightly that I would hope maybe they'd have a little bit more than 30 or 40% of the money committed and in hand before they start spending, I guess is I'm okay with it, but just something to watch.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Could we ask them, we'd take another vote on this on Tuesday. Can we ask them to make give us a brief update on Tuesday? I mean, we're spending the state, the municipality, and we are spending serious money,
Sounds great when you reach out to
material.
them and ask them to come and give us an update on where they at. And I'm kind of like Mr. Moody, most of these things we require receipts before we reimburse the money back. So that might be what we want to do on Tuesday. Amend it to say, once the money is spent, we'll reimburse them back. But
If they're unable to be here to give us a presentation, they could give us a letter or something, some sort of commitment on where we're going.
Or we could defer it until they do. I mean, I don't think there's any pending need,
defer it
really.
Tuesday.
We could do that, too.
we can do that. Let's move it on to Tuesday, and then if they can't make a
We'll see what they can do
presentation.
by Tuesday.
Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item number 6 is an economic development item, financial incentives for CK Cross Point 9 LLC. What is the pleasure?
Move for approval.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item 7, a US 17 and Main Road segment.
Move for approval.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Oh,
sir,
sorry,
Mr.
go ahead,
Moody.
okay.
Go
Well,
ahead. And I'll-
staff correctly notes in here that we use eminent domain on a very rare and very careful decision, and I agree with that. But this is not some long-term owner, some family parcel that's been around for 40 years. This, if I read it correctly, some guy that found out where we were going and bought some land in the right of way and is trying to make a buck. So I say go get it. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Johnson?
Well, he clarified.
He clarified it, okay.
That's what I was gonna say.
Any discussion? To the point. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it.
Sandbag.
Item number 8 is the sale of Charleston Center property, 334 Calhoun Street. Request to consider. Madam Attorney, you might want to explain to them what we're doing. So, it won't be no misperception or confusion in the news media as well, too, because we're taking an open vote, and I think you have some comments about, we took out the confidentiality clause, so I'd like you to explain so, the media and the public will know what we are doing.
Yes, sir. In the original document that we have, the agreement between the PSA between the county and CHS 334. The document allows for assigns, so council doesn't have to vote on the assignment. If they choose to assign it, that is solely within their purview. And we are.
You all right?
We are able to, I had some discussions with the property owner and their attorney recently, and they were willing to waive two provisions in the current PSA, one of which was a confidentiality provision, which allows us to discuss this in open session, and the second was the provision which allows for them to pull out of the agreement if they don't get the necessary rezoning. So both of those provisions will be waived by the time you all vote for this on third reading. I have one in writing and I'm waiting on the other. Additionally, every term that's captured in the PSA will apply to any company that this agreement is assigned to. So Charleston Center will be able to stay pursuant to the same terms under this agreement with no payment of rent or anything like that.
Until they move out of the building.
Until
Okay.
they move out, yes, sir.
All right, and so.
Approval.
Second, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Okay, so we would have to do 3 readings, so we're gonna have a special council meeting right after this to do
Yes,
the
sir.
first reading. All right, number 9, ARPA initiatives, I mean. What is the pleasure? I have just a couple of questions, but I'm gonna wait until somebody.
I'll go ahead and approve it.
Pardon me? All right, there'll be a second. Okay, let me get to the page here, 9A. My concern, ladies and gentlemen, is when we move down, I think it's the second where it says additional requirements, where it says the organization must be able to provide documents since, March 15, 2020, that they have provided assistance to the general public, which they are applying minus any other related assistance they have received. So that I need an explanation on, and why is that in there? And then secondly, it says the organization must have an appropriate business license. Most churches don't have business license, and those are most of the people out there that are doing the work, that are during the pandemic. So that needs to be stricken. I mean, if they're in good standing with the Secretary of State and got a 501c3, churches are not gonna have a business license. And this is for those folks that were helping out during the pandemic, giving out food and stuff like that, right?
So we are targeting, now we're talking about nonprofits.
Nonprofit.
It would be the church itself, it would be the nonprofit associated with the church.
Right.
Those should have business license. We taught, because they have to have a
They got a 501c3, but not a business license.
Now, understand, a church in and of itself is automatically a 501c3. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about churches who have set up a nonprofit organization.
All right.
And they have their 501c3
Right.
status. And we developed this talking with a few
I'm not questioning the 501c3, I'm questioning the business license. They wouldn't have to have a business license to do that. Because the churches doesn't pay taxes anyway if they're 501c3.
But again, sir, it's not the church. It would be the nonprofit
But
itself.
what I'm saying, the nonprofit, if it's set up under the church, doesn't need a business license.
Oh, I see what you're, okay.
Yeah, they're not in it for profit.
Okay, and that may be actually a mistake in our.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah, because when they set up the 501c3 separate, it's separated from the church, so that needs to be stricken, to allow these people to apply, because if they gotta have a license, they won't be able to apply.
We can remove the business license. I believe that was copying the language.
Okay.
Appropriate. We
Now,
can remove the business license.
yes, sir. Now, explain to me when you said if they receive funding from other sources, say for instance, they receive funding from the city of North Charleston or the city of Charleston, are you saying they have to deduct that from any amount they apply for?
Yes, so we're doing this as a reimbursement, because again, if we give out funds before they spend it, then we would be responsible for tracking that money and making sure that it was
Right.
Spent appropriately.
Mhm.
We don't have the staff to do that, and it would
Correct.
also slow down how quickly we could get the money out. So what we're doing is, money that they've already spent,
Mhm.
we're essentially reimbursing them for that. So we can't reimburse them for something they've already been reimbursed for. So essentially, it would be the money all the money that they spent minus any assistance that they receive, and they would be eligible for any amount up to $50,000.
So it's gonna hurt some of these people, because some of them got $100,000, and they only apply for 50, then it's no need for them to apply.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Okay, say for instance, one of these organizations got $100,000 from another entity. Okay?
Right.
So they would have to spend that $100,000, or if they say, you wanna know what they spent, if they only can get $50,000, why would they apply?
So now, our understanding, the organizations we've talked to, they've spent far above anything they've received in pandemic-related assistance.
Okay.
So we're only talking about pandemic-related assistance.
Okay.
So if they spent $100,000 and North Charleston gave them 50, then they're still eligible for 50. And again, we haven't talked to every.
But if they spent the whole 100, are they still eligible for 50 from us too?
I'm saying it.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. I understand what you're saying. You just don't want them to have the money sitting in the bank. They gotta show proof that they spent it.
Right.
No problem with that. Okay, all right. So there's been a motion and a second. Mr. Moody?
Chairman,
I'm sorry, Chairman.
I think that's wrong.
I think there needs to be a clarification on
Okay.
the last question.
Yes, okay, yes, ma'am.
So ask the last question again, please.
The last question I asked was, if they were granted, some of these organizations already were granted $100,000.
Okay.
Okay, so they would have to spend that entire $100,000 before they would be eligible for 50,000, correct?
Okay, actually, it works a little differently. We're going all the way back to March 15th, 2020. So whatever they've spent between March 15th, 2020 and the day they apply is eligible for reimbursement, minus any pandemic assistance they've received. So it doesn't matter, so between that date and this, if they've spent $100,000 and they got $100,000 from North Charleston, then they would not be eligible for any more. But most of them, all the ones that we've talked to, have spent far above any pandemic-related relief they've got.
Yeah, see, my concern is you're putting these people at a disadvantage. Okay, we're gonna have money left over, that should be spent for to help the people out there that needs the help the most. So if somebody got $100,000 and they was helping everybody out countywide,
But I think, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So my thing is, I just don't want to make this process so difficult that the people who actually did the work during the pandemic doesn't get what they have, because a lot of these people use volunteers and they did their labor for free. That's not included in what they paid out. And so if we had to help people, I don't want to put a stranglehold on them, because that's what the money is intended. I don't want to send anything back to the government that's not supposed to go.
I would agree. So two things that I would say to that. It's not, when I'm listening to your question, it sounds as if your starting point is when they receive some other assistance. That's not the starting point. The starting point goes all the way back to the beginning. So many of these organizations were already helping people. So they're sending money out the door, they're feeding people, they're doing whatever. Then a municipality may have come in and given them some money. I would almost guarantee that money was nothing in comparison to what they've been spending. So essentially, you're just deducting that. And the only reason we're deducting it is, again, we don't want to reimburse a reimbursement. And that's the only reason that's in there. But I don't think that'll be an issue. Plus, the second thing I want you to understand is that there are two additional nonprofit initiatives that we have coming behind this. We have a capacity building grant initiative that will be coming to ask you to approve, and then behind that, there are a number of organizations, because the biggest need is from a lot of these nonprofits is they're trying to get some kind of housing going, and they're having issues in that area. So the third thing we'll come and ask for is specific capacity building assistance to help those nonprofits that are trying to do some kind of housing related initiative. So this isn't the only relief that's coming. It's just written this way so we can do it quickly.
Two quick points. So when you do that, you're helping the big organizations and you're squeezing the small, because not all small organizations are in the housing.
Right.
You understand? Most of them are just in the food distribution.
Right.
And maybe giving out, hygienes and all that stuff, but when you say housing initiative, most of these small organizations are not into that. But as you go further down the road, Secondly, when are we gonna come out for these mom and pops like we were talking about, these people during the pandemic that had to shut down?
That's the next item on the agenda.
All right, that's the next item on the agenda. Okay, we wanna make sure we do that too. Okay, Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that, for my question, I think the key is it's reimbursable. So if they've already gotten money from somebody, they gotta go spend the money and then get reimbursed again. So they can't, double reimbursement is, or reimbursement of reimbursement was a good phrase. So the question I had, and I'm okay with what Mr. Pryor said, but I wanna make sure if we remove something, is that, we wanna make sure this doesn't make us run afoul of any type of federal.
Removing the business license?
Yeah, yeah.
No, that
Okay.
won't be a problem. That was actually, we were putting it together. I think
Okay,
we
cool.
just
I wanna
got
make sure that
the
wasn't something that you had.
Clarify, it just says applicable.
Okay.
Applicable. Only if it's something that's required. If the language in the yellow sheet is if it's applicable under any of the regulations that the county has, it wouldn't be on top of a regulation that isn't required to distinguish what it says in the yellow sheet.
I just want to make sure we're not pulling something out that would let somebody looking over our shoulder come back and say, you shouldn't have done that, pay this money back.
Well, he's talking about the church, and,
Right.
the church itself is already exempt
Right. He already exempt.
categories.
That's
Different
why.
issue.
Yeah, different issue. That's why I was trying to tell you, already exempt.
So
They
just to
don't need a
confirm,
business license.
these are one-time payments, or I guess an organization could come back for multiple times, but these are one-time ARPA payments. This is not something we're going to be putting on, this is not budgetary, because sometimes these one-time things have a way of finding their way onto the county budget.
Yeah, we need to
This is one time.
get
Thank
those
you. I
off.
believe that's specified.
One time from the money, this is just for the ARPA money.
Help me get those things out of
Got a question and comment. You mentioned staff monitoring it, and it said in the yellow sheet that it's going to be monitored by the Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization
Yes, sir.
Group. Are y'all staffed up for that? I mean, can y'all?
Well, again, by doing it as reimbursements, we only have to review it on the front side. And once we have determined that all those expenses are eligible, that's the monitoring.
Well, I guess maybe my question is more about 9B, because you're going to be monitoring those forgivable loans too. And when these companies fall out of line with the requirements, and they will, or if they're in default, that money's gone.
Let's discuss that on 9B.
Yeah.
Okay.
We moved for both of them.
No,
Okay,
no.
sorry. Yep.
Just-
I'll hold
Discuss that
for
on 9B,
yes.
because
Yep, sorry.
Mr. Honeycutt,
The only question I have is, does everything in this yellow sheet pertaining to 9A comply with the requirements for how we spend this money?
Yes.
yeah, and so we didn't add or take away from it. We didn't add our own, because that's one thing that, a council member had asked me from North Charleston. He says, the government already had restrictions on this money when we got it, and we passed that. So did we add on any other restriction to ours? Are we going by the federal guideline? Because I don't want us adding things in that the government didn't require.
The only thing that we put in here was to comply with CFR 200 regarding federal grants. And we're not trying to be any more restrictive than the ARPA legislation and CFR 200.
All right, that's in CRF 200 is explained in case.
That is essentially the due diligence guidelines that you need to follow when you put out federal grant money.
Okay, all right. Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Item 9B.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Second for discussion. Any?
Second.
Yes, sir.
All right, I got a second for discussion. All right. Now, Mr. Moody.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I thought we'd move for both of those at the same time, so I'm sorry I stepped ahead. But no, my comment was on the monitoring. It's a forgivable loan over some period of time, but when they fall out of compliance, and they will, it's not like we've got a mortgage on their house, we can go get, that money is gone. So the due diligence has got to be done on the front end before the money walks out that door, because when it's gone, it's gone.
Correct. So, again, here again, we use the minimum requirements that we could do to comply with the ARPA legislation and CFR 200. So actually, in staff discussions, after this yellow sheet went to council, there was an alternative way that we figured out we could do it that made it much easier, which is to make it as a grant with a lien. So the grants would go out if they did not comply over the time. And essentially, the biggest thing we're worried about is them selling the business. If the business is sold, then they would have to satisfy that lien by repaying the money.
I like that.
Other than that, if they go into bankruptcy or something like that, we're not gonna get that money back anyway, so there's no use, looking at that. So as long as they stay compliant, And again, only these first few items here maintain compliance. If they leave the county, obviously that would be a problem. If they pack up and move to Berkeley County, then they would no longer be in compliance. But the things we have to monitor are very minimal.
Okay.
They're still in Charleston County, they're still in operation, and they haven't sold the business.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just one more. I just wanted to know what was the time period they have to complete with the loan?
It's not a loan, it's a grant.
I'm sorry?
The grant period that you're allowing people to take advantage of?
I believe it was 3 years.
Okay.
You done with Johnson? Maybe I don't understand what we're trying to accomplish, and maybe somebody can explain to me. If you had a barber shop, a beauty salon, maybe a gymnasium or whatever, you were shut down for dang near a year because the government had said you couldn't use it. You know, these people had expenses of their own that they took money out of their pocket to either keep the lights on, the building, you know, whatever mortgage they were paying. So why would we restrict them to 3 years to say you gotta do something for 3 years? I thought this money was meant to replenish what they already had lost. These are the people that was able to get money from the big disbursement that came out. These are people that mom and pop's operation that was struggling to stay in, and they finally made it. And so we actually just giving them a hands up and said, okay, hey, you made it. We want to make sure you stay in it. But to monitor them for 3 years, to me, somebody explain to me what sense does that make?
So those.
They may as well go to the bank and get a loan.
So just keep in mind, what we're monitoring is extremely minimal.
Right.
Essentially that they stay in the county and don't
Okay.
sell the business.
That's fine.
That's
Okay.
pretty much it.
That's pretty
what
much,
we're
right.
monitoring for 3 years.
Because I heard Mr. Moody say, you know, we need to monitor this and monitor that. So that's fine. It's simple. I don't want to do no more than the government requires.
Absolutely.
That's all. Okay. Because it's, you know, sometimes it seems when you're trying to help the least of the least, that people think they're getting something for nothing and they want to put tighter requirements, and that's not what we had to do. We had to give them relief. Because the big people in the banks gobbled up all the first money. So that's just my 2 cents worth. Anybody else?
Some of whom didn't even need it.
Sir?
Some of whom did not need it in the first place.
All right, Mr. Werman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, you know, I see that once businesses are determined to be eligible, final recommendation comes to council. I take that to mean, assuming we get way more applications than we actually have money for, y'all are vetting that and determining these things based on the criteria that we've sort of assessed as need, and y'all are going to be presenting those recommendations, having vetted them. This is not sort of a by right, first come, first serve type thing.
Well, it's actually both.
Okay.
As the applications come in, they will be processed, they will be determined whether they're eligible. And if we end up with more applications than we have money, we will accept them, you know, it'll be first come, first serve, and those will come to council for your recommendation. And then we would, depending on how many businesses were out there, we have the choice of either asking council for more money to serve those other businesses that apply. But if we're undersubscribed, then we would probably do a second round of applications.
Okay.
Get them in.
All right.
All right. So, and one more question. So we're not going to have a period. If somebody submits an application, we're not going to wait, you know, until we get 10 or 12 applications. That application will be looked at, and then we move it on to council as it comes in.
So the application period that we're anticipating is approximately 3 weeks for the first round, because we want to bring them all to council.
Okay, no, I got you. 3 weeks and they all come.
Yes.
All right, okay. Anybody else? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item number 10, Reverend Middleton.
Mr. Chair, I would like to propose that we appoint the following persons to this Housing Steering Committee. 10A, Property Management, Carol Jackson. 10B, Workforce Development, Craig Logan. 10C, Social Services, Nashonda Hunter. 10D, Community Development, Duncan Cheney and Henrietta Woodward, 2 appointments. 10E, Policy and Advocacy, Branton Riley. 10F, Community Organizing, Josh Dix. 10G, Housing Finance, Joseph Dukes. 10H, Housing Development, Joe Porter. 10I, Housing Development or Finance, Lynn Boley. 10J, Transportation, Billy Swales. And we would like to offer 10K Education, Elvin Spates, 10L Homelessness, John Roden, for the full 13 appointments.
Second.
By Ms. Honeycutt, any discussion?
Give me a minute just to look back over those. What were the two on the end there, Roden and who?
Education, Elvin Spates, Homelessness, John Roden.
Chairman, I'll comment while Mr. Spears is looking.
Oh, you want to comment?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I was going to say, the last 18 months or so, all of our boards and commissions, it seems to me, have been taking a real uptick in the quality and quantity of candidates, which is wonderful to see. I'm going to support this committee. It's got important work. I know, Mrs. Durant, you guys will have a solid group here, free of politics, good all-around contributions from a lot of different areas, and I just hope for the sake of this county that additional advertisements for future committees are as well received as this one is and we've seen in the recent past. Thank you, sir.
All right, Mr. Swayers.
I would agree, a lot of very strong candidates on here. I don't know anything about Spates, so can somebody brief me on Spates?
Mr. Darby?
Darby?
Yes, sir. Mr. Spates is a grassroots person, sir, who has an intimate interest in helping communities, particularly that of the elderly, in terms of their homes, as well as he's very much involved in young people in terms of getting the education and to have them become financial independent as they come along, sir.
Does he do it as a profession or?
No, sir, not as a profession. No, sir, not as a profession, sir. I don't know what it,
And he helps out at schools too, because, you know.
well, definitely the school
he
realm,
helps out
sir.
at schools.
Yes, sir. You won't be disappointed, sir.
Okay.
Questions? I keep trying to call you Reverend Milton, and I know y'all don't look alike.
You've done that, but I appreciate it. Always an
Mr.
honor to
Reverend.
be confused with.
We are close enough, though. It's all right, you know.
Very good.
Go ahead, Mr. Werman.
Certainly a lot of very, very qualified candidates. I'm very impressed with most of the slate. I would like to separate 10I, though. If we can do that.
10I?
I would nominate James Gergen, who I found to be incredibly impressive when I stalked him via
So
Google.
which one is that? All right, so let's go everything else, and then we'll come back to 10I.
Right?
Okay, all in favor, A through J, with the exception of I? Or A through whatever?
A through L, with the exception of I.
I, say aye.
Accept that, point of order, if I may?
Yes,
They we need to accept the ask to, because there's a motion on the floor to approve the
I
slate.
thought somebody seconded it. Ms. Johnson, did you second?
I did.
Oh, Jenny seconded, yes.
Do we need to vote on that first?
Yeah, we're gonna vote on the motion that he just made, but we're gonna pull I out. He wants to
I was
separate-
part of the motion.
I was part of the motion.
But would you exclude I?
I have accepted that.
Okay, he
yeah.
accepted that, and Jenny has accepted that.
I would prefer not to accept that and vote on the slate as presented. I thought we had an agreement on that.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think it'll change. That's your call. If you don't wanna, I mean, his motion is, give him a chance on I to see. I don't think that's gonna change.
I mean, I'm happy with all of the other ones. I'd like to keep I.
Okay? There you go. Mr. Werman, that's kinda tough for me there.
Call for the vote and see where it goes.
If it fails, then we can.
All right, Mr. Werman, she didn't wanna give up her second. So all in favor of the original motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Okay? But this will move on to us on Tuesday. All right, now, we have need of a special county council meeting.
Chair, as you are preparing for the special county council meeting, I would just like to announce, if you would allow me to, that tomorrow is the 230th Founders Day of our sister city, Freetown, Sierra Leone. I just wanted to announce that.
Thank you, sir, for that information. All right, item number 1 is the Freedom of Information Act in Salisbury.
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meeting was posted and agendas were distributed to news media and persons requesting notification.
Okay, 2A is the sale of the center.
Move for committee recommendation.
Yes, move and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it, first reading.
An ordinance authorizing the conveyance of real property totaling approximately 2.68 acres located at 334 Calhoun Street, parcel ID 46014000019 to CHS 334 LLC and/or its assigns.
Okay, anything before we adjourn? Thank, Ms. Woodward, thank you for being allowed to serve. I mean, I think you've always done this county great, and you were one of the first person I thought of when we did this. So thank you for, coming out and allowing yourself to be, a part of this. I
Ms.
think
Jackson was here, but she
Ms.
just
Jackson,
walked.
she
just
left.
walked out
Anybody
the
else
door.
here on the committee?
Here.
Yeah, well, thank y'all all, anybody, thank y'all all for being, taking the time out of your busy schedule to take this important task up. I think you will do great. We got some great leaders, and everybody's not gonna agree, but the majority rules. So we just move on, hope y'all give us a good product. And lastly, I'd like to say, my passion for poor people and underserved has always been one of my passions, along with Mr. Darby when he came here. So when you see us ask questions, you see us fight hard for the underserved, it's because, when you're in the trenches or you know what it's like to live a life like that, it makes you, more compassionate. Not saying people are not compassionate, but that's where my passion comes from. Because, you've been in that and being a small business operator for many, many years. I know it's tough. Some weeks you go home, everybody else get paid, but you don't get paid. And so you want to make sure, we take care of those folks, because closing up your business for almost a year with no fault of your own, that's big. Most of these people depleted their savings account, or they robbed Peter to pay Paul just to stay up about thing. Something hurt me today. I saw Roberta Restaurant is fixing to sell the restaurant they're closing because, number two, you can't find no help. And number two, the girls are tired, and the pandemic just about, blasted them. So I'm trying to encourage them, and I'm gonna encourage them and reach out to them to be one of the first applicants to see if they could, just hang in there a little while longer. Because we need more minority businesses, and, these people have been down in that area for many, many years and done a lot to help the underserved as well. So, keep them in your prayers, and I'm gonna go visit them tomorrow, see if I can, help them in any way. Mr. Darby?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. On the subject matter of help, is there anything that this council can do to assist Ukraine in terms of helping out the women and children, and any things in terms of funds? I mean, just a thought, perhaps we can talk about it on Tuesday. Just want to know if Connie could do anything.
We can talk about it on Tuesday.
Thank
Let's
you,
do
sir.
that. Okay?
All right, sir.
All right, anybody else? Meeting adjourned.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have contact information for Elvin Speights?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Christine.
Yeah.
Christine.
Yeah, that's what, that's what I was.
Okay, Doc.
You can have the rest of I know when I called her about a month ago, I was concerned. I said,